the first module, which we mentioned, is longevity and the future of health. And our first speaker of the segment is Sergey Young, a longevity investor and visionary with a mission to extend healthy lifespans of at least 1 billion people. To do that, Sergey founded Longevity Vision Fund to accelerate life extension technological breakthroughs and to make longevity affordable and accessible for all. Sergey is on the board of directors of the American Federation of Aging Research and the development sponsor of Age Reversal X Prize global competition designed to cure aging. His words, not mine. Cure aging is quite an interesting way of putting it. He will be telling us about why longevity is $1 trillion opportunity. So, Sergey, the virtual floor is yours.
Hello.
Hi, masters and robots. This is Sergey Young. I'm so excited to be here. The title of my talk is Why Longevity is the Next $1 Trillion Opportunity. I think this is super exciting. And the funny thing about this discussion that this is happening while Apple just became the most expensive company in the world. Apple, a few weeks ago, if you don't know, crossed $2 trillion market capitalization benchmark. And if you want to compare this figure to how much money we spend on anti-aging research and development, it's actually 1,000 times smaller. It's $2 billion that we spend globally on research and development of aging and age-related disease. Why is that? Why are we attaching so much value to Apple and 1,000 times less capital and resources to fighting aging? So I would argue that we're just in the beginning of the wave when new 1 trillion industry will be created. And the name of this industry is longevity. By the way, a process question, if you want to have a copy of my charts, send me email at slides@sergeyyoung.com. I'm going to repeat it in the end. So you don't need to screenshot all my charts, and let's enjoy the presentation. Just a little bit of background about me. I'm very passionate about longevity, as you can see. My mission actually to change 1 billion lives by bringing affordable and accessible version of longevity and digital healthcare to the world. To do that, I've set up Longevity Vision Fund. It's a US-based investment fund, which invests in different technologies, which actually supporting affordable and accessible version of healthcare. I'm also on the board of directors of American Federation of Aging, and I'm very proud to be partnering with Peter Diamandis and all of these great minds in the field of longevity to sponsor Age Reversal X Prize. This is global pro bono competition of different technologies which can bring more healthy and happy years to our life. So, well, this is the agenda for the talk today. And what I want to present is how we, inside Longevity Vision Fund, think about longevity as a sector and why do we think it will prosper and this will become a $1 trillion opportunity in the near future. So I'll start with demand shocks. A lot of things happening in the world today, which would actually push us to react in a way. Well, the second dimension is the breakthrough innovations, which is happening in different places. I'm talking about the changing of healthcare paradigm. I'm talking about technology. I'm talking about science, etc. And what I want to finish is with addressing abundance of capital as enabler number one for longevity, and then going into policies and regulations later on. Well, let's start with demand. It's pretty shocking picture. So this is the summary slide. So let's skip that. And I want to talk about silver tsunami. This is the shock number one that we're facing pretty soon. And I mean, we all know world is becoming much, much older every year. And every time I was trying to support this point with the facts, I actually used figures for year 2050, 30 years from now. 30 years from now, the number of people who are 60 years and above in the world will increase from 1 billion to 2 billion globally. Well, that's a lot of people. And I was thinking, but that this is, next few decades problem. Until I recently looked through National Longevity Program for Singapore. I think the name of the program is Singapore 100. And I realized that in Singapore, in 10 years from now, 25% of people will be considered as the older part of population. They actually have 65 years and above. So forget about 2050. The silver tsunami is coming and approaching us pretty soon. Well, the second problem with demand shock that we're all experiencing, that the older we are, the more we are prone to age-related disease. And these are the names of disease that we all know. I'm talking about cancer, I'm talking about diabetes, I'm talking about a lot of different neurodegenerative disease like dementia, and I'm talking about heart disease as well. In fact, if you're above 50, the chances to die from cancer or heart disease is 50% and more. So half of the deaths in the world happening from these two age-related disease. And this is not the only problem. The problem is that all these diseases, they come in combination. They actually complicate each other. So in 90% of cases, this is actually two or more age-related disease that all of us facing in the age of 80 plus. Then final third shock, and I was about to say that all of this is complemented by unhealthy lifestyle. Obviously, it's not complemented, it's multiplied by unhealthy lifestyle. And we've done really bad job as a humans to make our health even worse and health conditions as well. If you don't know, for the last 3 years, the average life expectancy in US and United States decreased for 3 years in a row. And in addition to poor diet and lack of exercise, which has been a problem for humanity for many decades, for the last 2 decades, we added insufficient sleep and we added mental health problem. In fact, more than 70% of US adults have different level of stress that impacts their mental and physical health. So that's obviously pretty shocking picture. Well, let's switch to something much more positive. And let's talk about innovations that we see in different spaces. This is, again, the summary chart. I want to start with how healthcare is changing its paradigm. If you think about healthcare today, this is very symptomatic. This is one size fits all. And this is nowhere near to be kind of technologically driven as well. So if you think about healthcare of the future, and you can start to observe these changes pretty soon, healthcare is becoming much more personalized, much more targeted, and much more reactive rather than proactive. I'm actually, this is no coincidence, I'm using Zeo Patch as an example here. I'm doing my annual health checkup every year in January. And for the first 7 years, I was using the old style Holter heart monitor. So this is just a lot of wires. There's a big chunk of equipment here. You need to wear this for 24 hours to measure how your heart works, as any heart areas there. For the last 3 years, I switched my annual checkup to Human Longevity Center in San Diego, California. And they just give you this Zeo Patch. You put it here on your shoulder and you wear it for 7 days in a row. You can do everything. And apart from swimming in a swimming pool, the rest, you can do sport, you can take shower, you can sleep well, unlike the case with Holter. And the beauty about this whole thing, it just take all the record, how your heart work, you put it on a chip, you send this chip by post to this company and analyze a lot of risk associated with your heart health. So that's amazing. And it's really conceptual change that we experience and we see in healthcare. So the second thing is about technology. I'm actually talking specifically about robots and AI. And I have a lot of friends who work in healthcare, who are medical doctors. And every time I talk to them, some of them saying, well, Sergey, I'm really afraid of AI and robots coming into our space and taking over my job. I have much more positive view on that. I actually think it's combination of human element and technological element, whether it's robot or artificial intelligence, will make a huge progress and actually will create a lot of different jobs in the healthcare, and will help us to add few healthy and happy years to our life. So let's talk about use of artificial intelligence. I told you about the importance of being proactive about your health, right? So if you look at cancer, if you catch cancer at really early stage, so if you've done early diagnostic of your cancer risks, your opportunity, your chances to survive and recover is anywhere between 93 and 100% for 5 major types of cancer. Obviously, if you give your MRI to a human doctor, success rate is not that high. But if you equip doctor with artificial intelligence, with algorithm to do this diagnostic, success rate increased from 38 to 99%. Well, that's a lot of success in terms of early diagnostic of cancer. Not only that, then doctors have more time to spend with us, with humans, rather than just looking at your MRI or your X-ray scan. So combination of artificial intelligence and doctors analyze MRI scan in 4 seconds, while doctor does it in the course of 13 minutes. So that's more time for 2 of us to have proper conversation with our doctors. Well, the second thing is use of AI in drug discovery and development. And the current state of drug development and drug discovery process is pretty awful. If you look at US statistics, for the drug to be discovered and be available for you in a pharmacy, this will take on average somewhere about 10 to 12 years. And the cost of this process is $2.6 billion. This is because we're talking about human life, and regulation is so tight on that. So if you take artificial intelligence and let it do the first initial 2 or 3 period of discovery of potential target for the drugs, and this is what is done by many companies on earth, including in Silica Medicine, which I'm using here as an example. This is the company from our investment portfolio. It's actually compressed with 2 or 3 years of identification of drug targets into 2 months. So that's enormous breakthrough. And then my favorite topic is about use of robots in surgery and in medicine. I'm a big fan of a company called Intuitive Surgical. This is a huge company. Last time I checked, they were $80 billion market cap. They're one of the largest producers of robots, which used for heart surgery. And I had a chat, it was a year ago, to the director of hospital. We just installed these robots. What they say, they didn't fire any single medical professional. In fact, they've been able to attract more and more patients because they're doing robotic surgeries, and they created more jobs. And I embrace Intuitive Surgical. I embrace more and more players coming into this area, like Johnson & Johnson with 2 recent acquisitions. And then, well, let's talk about science. We think about science as something like really old, something is happening, in the lab with mice and is always pretty boring. Well, it's not the case anymore. We've done amazing breakthroughs in the last few decades in the field of genome sequencing, gene therapy, gene editing. So we can now correct and remove genes in our DNA. We can silence some of the genes. So that's amazing. And it was actually very refreshing to see these capabilities to use when COVID crisis hit the world. Unlike cases with the previous viruses, when we spent a lot of years trying to decode how we should approach the war against this virus. I think it was in the course of just 30 days, we've been able to sequence genome of this virus and create a lot of testing capabilities. And this information is used also in terms of developing of vaccines and developing of repurposed drugs against coronavirus. So that's been very timely invention. And then I'm also a big fan of organ regeneration space. It's a part of a bigger field of medicine called regenerative medicine, which is actually deals with our ability to regenerate pieces of our body. And we just invested in a company, they're based in Pittsburgh, company called Ligenesis, which use our own lymph nodes to regrow our artificial organs within our own bodies. So think about liver transplantation. Liver transplantation in the United States is very expensive procedure. It's somewhere about $800,000 that you need to spend to get new donor liver. Not only that, you need to wait for a few months and sometimes few years for liver donor organ to arrive and be available for you. So what Ligenesis does, it splits donor liver in 50 to 80 pieces and use very simple laparoscopic surgery to put this nucleus, this piece of the donor liver inside your own body. And then in the course of 6 months, like plan B for the liver is growing inside your body. So that's amazing technology. And they actually start a trial with humans early next year. So this is actually much closer to us than we think. And then, just speaking about this demand shocks, and then we switch to what is happening in the world of innovations from scientific to technological side. I'd like us to focus on two enablers. So one enabler is capital. And we obviously, to solve one of the world's biggest problems, which is aging, we need abundance of capital. So traditionally, we had only one player, one source for the capital, and it's called Big Pharma. This is big pharmaceutical companies which existed long ago. Well, funny enough, they face pretty challenging environment in the next few decades. In fact, $200 billion of sales of Big Pharma are at risk due to the fact that some of their IPs, patent expires in the next 5 years. So that leads to the record inflow of M&A and any other investment kind of money from Big Pharma going into healthcare, and digital healthcare and longevity space. So then, in addition to this traditional source, I'm really happy to see more and more venture money flowing into the space. And for the last 5 years, I think it was more than $60 billion of VC investments going into global life science situation, global life science project. And this is not surprising that pre and post-COVID, almost half of the world IPOs was in the last 12 months were healthcare IPOs. So there's an amazing opportunity to make more money and solve a lot of health-related problems in the world. And the third source of capital for me is probably the most amazing and the most powerful one. And this is the tech giants called Google, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft. We tend to think about these companies as just pure technological companies. But I do think that they're going to be the largest healthcare players in the world in the next 10 years. So Apple, just look at the Morgan Stanley investment banking report on Apple, which came last year. They think that Apple can make up to 300 billion. This is 50% of the Apple revenue by year 2027 from healthcare. And you've seen a lot of examples of Google buying Fitbit for more than $2 billion. Amazon introducing its own wearables. Apple just integrated oxygen level monitoring in its new version of Apple Watch. And actually, that's a great opportunity to talk about wearables. We tend to think that Apple Watch or Fitbit is just activity tracker. It's not anymore. It's our personalized healthcare device, which can track somewhere around 90%. I'm pretty sure in the next 3 to 5 years, these devices will track 90 to 95% of all the information that you need to know about your own health to make sure you're very proactive about identifying different risks. So, I love these devices and I encourage you to use them more and more. So, well, then finally, let's talk about policies and regulations. I'm a big fan and I'm a big proponent of classifying aging as disease. Make an experiment. Go to your pharmacy today or tomorrow and ask them about anti-aging drug. They would think you're crazy. Or they would just send you to buy cosmetics or buy supplements. Well, this is not normal. We all know that aging is a huge risk factor. And in the beginning of my presentation, we've seen that the older you are, your risk of catching deadly disease is just growing exponentially. So funny enough, we're making some progress here, and World Health Organization added new code called All Age to disease classification system, and I'm waiting when many regulators around the world will classify aging either as a risk factor or as a particular class of disease. Well, why is that important? Because this will give an opportunity to create sustainable economic model for any player who would like to invest in anti-aging intervention or anti-aging research. This will give us an opportunity to protect intellectual rights and make sure there's payoff for these investments. And we've seen a lot of regulatory changes recently. I just want to use a couple of examples. We've seen enormous and quick response that regulators all around the world demonstrated in the face of coronavirus crisis. And just recall how many different tests we've seen in the first few months of quarantine. So that's amazing. That's because regulators change their views, change their lenses in terms of the speed of approval of testing capabilities for coronavirus. Or the other regulatory initiative, which has been done in the US, called Orphan Drug Act, when FDA, this is the commission in agency in the US, which is responsible for food and drug, they created the new innovative regulatory process. So if you develop the drug for so-called rare disease, you will receive the approval for this drug much, much faster. So on the back of that, 730 drugs has been approved, and 400 million people who's suffering from rare diseases worldwide. This is almost like 5% of the world's global population. They see a light in the end of the tunnel, that their rare disease, regularly it's genetic disease, will have a drug which they can use to treat that. So that's amazing. And finally, a few words on why aging is central. When I think about aging, I always use our fight against cancer as an example. So look at these figures. $90 billion every year is put into research and development and developing drugs and different interventions against cancer. Well, this is not surprising that we are right in the middle of winning the war against cancer. Think about 20 years ago. People were delaying the date when they knew whether they have cancer or not. Right now, again, as we discussed, if you identify your cancer risk really early, your chances to recovery is more than 90%. Well, I do believe that fighting aging is going to be the next cancer case, and we will increase this $2 to $4 billion spent on aging research and development every year to 100 billion. So this will address huge unmet need, because 30 million people die every year in this world from age-related diseases. And this is a significant market opportunity. $250 billion spent every year on prescription drugs for age-related disease. And this is on global scale. We at Longevity Vision Fund love to support creation of this industry. We invest in a lot of different things which improve our health and add healthy and happy years to our life. I'm talking about early cancer detection platforms, portable ultrasound devices, and I already presented a few other investments that we've made in organ regeneration or use of artificial intelligence in medicine. Well, that's probably it for today. Again, if you want to have a copy of the slides, feel free to go to sergeyyoung.com, sign up for our newsletters, or send us email at slides@sergeyyoung.com. We'll be very happy to share this with you. So with this in mind, I'm very excited that I had an opportunity to present to you today. And I do hope that sooner or later, all of us will form amazing, huge longevity movement, and we all will be able to add few decades of healthy and happy years to our lives. Thank you.